Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one is going to be for episode 254. So, this episode more or less brought the arc to a close. It looks like the next episode is going to be sort of an epilogue, but some of the wording in the preview felt a little bit weird, that like they leave and then like have to go on a mission back, so I guess this is a way to have a little bit of a time skip to show the progress in the aftermath of the war not happening, and the Mists negotiating with the Fanato. That's what they're going to do. But as for this episode, very complicated thoughts on this one, because there are elements of this that I thought they actually sort of managed to get really right, and then there are other decisions that I just felt were really like baffling. That this arc, I think, has been, for me, summed up by one of the most clear-cut examples of an arc that has been needlessly stretched out. That is like 10 episodes longer than it needs to be. They really, really labored to get to this kind of finale. And then you get to right at the end, and it felt so rushed right at the end. Now, again, we still have the next episode, which I assume will act as an epilogue, because I think 255 next week is going to be that episode, and then 256 goes into something completely different. So they have one episode to sort of bring this all together last second. But for the end of what seems like the action side of things, they did well with the whole ending cycle of hatred, stopping the war. But they did quite poorly when it came to, I think, just say like Amari as a villain. Very like deeply unsatisfying ending there on that side of things. And I'm not like desperate for like I absolutely needed a giant fight, but I don't like that this means that the main big fight that we had in the series was the Funamushi stuff. And I don't like that, we struggled against him, but Kawaki can just like one-shot, like assassinate Amari like no problem, even though Amari was held in like a high security prison and like he shouldn't be allowed near water at all. I thought they were going to do some sort of a thing where Amari would showcase his powers and the other characters would have to team up. That to me is the ideal way to do this, because I was ultimately pretty happy with most of how they did the Boruto wanting to sacrifice himself to end this, and kind of being like, I don't want to seek revenge anymore for what happened to the people that were close to me in this conflict. I'll sacrifice myself. Kobuna can get his revenge. You can take your revenge against me, and I will make it so that Sarada and Mitsuki, who are right here, will not take revenge for me. This will show that you don't have to avenge those who have died, and you can choose to stop it in that way. And I like the way that they did a lot of the scenes that happened here, in that they had Boruto get beaten up, but obviously that's not going to satisfy the general sort of population of people. And then it comes around to the person who needs to actually finish off Boruto has to be Kobuna, because he is the one who lost his father. Now, again, the one complicated thing that I think is a hindrance to all of this is that Boruto didn't actually kill anyone himself. And they're acting like he was the one who dealt the final finishing blow against Funamushi, that he was the one who killed Ikada's sister, when it wasn't the case. And because of what we're dealing with, sort of important stuff, getting the details right, I feel, is important. And so I struggle with that in my mind, that like they're saying like, oh, he killed Funamushi, and like he really didn't. I get it, he delivered 2 blows against him, but it was Bunton who was actually the one who killed him in the end. But anyway, they have effectively Boruto sort of walk the plank, and Kobuna is meant to sort of push him into the ocean. And I liked what they did here, because you could see that Kobuna is emotional. He feels like this is kind of what he has to do, But he's shaking as he walks up to do this, because I suppose it's sort of hitting him that I'm angry and sad about the death of my father, but I'm not sure if I want to kill someone to kind of move past that pain, or take this vengeance. And Boruto, I actually like this moment. Like, he just stops sort of Kabuna's shaking hands and just steps back himself, so that like it sort of looks like, okay, contact was made, Kabuna actually did it, and Boruto does fall into the water. And like they've done a decent job of getting across the idea that, the waters are bad. This kind of bookmarks, in a way, the arc. We sort of started to a degree with Boruto falling in the first time, being saved by Akata, and we actually ended sort of with that as well. That was good. So Boruto falls, and it's no one's jumping in to save him, so he's gone. And this is where they switched it over to focusing on Ikada then wanting to see if the sort of other side of this actually works. Like, Boruto is dead. What are you two going to do? I'm just going to stand here, kind of like Boruto did. Are you going to now take vengeance against me for what happened? And I like the way they did this, because for Sarada and Mitsuki, they you could tell that there's an element of like they want to. There's a sense that they would like to do that, but they know that Boruto did this for the whole aim of stopping this, and that if they were to do that, they would be going against sort of his final wishes. So I like that it was Mitsuki like barely holding the sort of Sage Mode activation back. There was Sarada, on the verge of maybe activating the Sharingan. I know some people were sort of afraid that, like, oh, I hope they don't waste the third Tomoe kind of reveal on this. And I have 2 points in this. One is that I don't think they were ever going to do it in this sort of context in the first place, because I think they are taking Sarada down a different path with how she unlocks her Sharingan abilities, and it's not going to be all about sadness and that sort of thing. So just because of that, I was like, I don't think that's how they're going to go for the unlocks effectively with Sarada. The other point is just that, like, because the manga already has Sarada with the 3 Tomoe, like, I don't even place all that significance on what the third one actually is going to, like, give to her. I do think the big one is going to be whatever they do with the Mangekyo, but I think we're a long way away from that. So there was that. But I liked where they kind of went with this, because they had, like, Ikada sort of stand them up and basically be like, go for it, absolutely go and try for it. And she activates the Sharingan, but can't bring herself to do that. And then they make I think the interesting points that I think really connected together, and that is that kind of Ikada sort of taunts her of like, do you not care for your friend? And she's like, no, it does hurt. It really, really hurts. We grew up together. He was basically like a brother to me, and that connects to the fact that Ikada is like this because he lost his sister. So there's that kind of understanding in place there, and the fact that Sarada is able to hold herself back and not want to take this vengeance shows that this is not just the default path that you have to take. And that then kind of, in a way, transitions them into this idea of some of the other random kind of Fanado members begin to sort of bring up points of like, they kind of want the killing to stop as well. They don't want their children to grow up in this situation where they will all have to take revenge for the deaths of their fathers or mothers. And I especially like then that you go back to Kabuna, who is struggling to deal with the idea that, have I done the right thing? Of like, effectively, has quote unquote killing Boruto actually done anything for me? Did I do the right thing by taking this vengeance? And just that questioning is probably more impactful on the scene than anything else. Kind of highlighting someone who's just taken their vengeance, showing deep regret for what actually has just happened, and that it doesn't solve anything. Just the proof positive right there. And it's the combination of all of these things that cause Ikada to actually jump into the water. The only thing I would say about this is that I don't think they did a fantastic job in the episodes like all before this of like presenting Ikada. I think they went too far down the he's now a villain road, and it was like completely all the way over here. Whereas I think they needed to have it be a little bit more sort of like in the middle, you know, leaning in that direction, just to show a few glimmers of like you can get through to him. Where they showed that, but I think there needed to be in previous episodes more of a sense that the old Ikada is there. Just because of the way it ultimately worked out, I think this was the correct approach to have. So, you know, it's a relatively subtle point, but I like what we got to. So we get the repeat scene from like the early on in the arc, dives into the water and saves Boruto. But this time he gets out and he saves Boruto from how far he's fallen into the ocean by using the sea god dragon power. And we see it in, I suppose, full display for the first time, that he can create this full dragon kind of construct out of water. And it's this amazing display of power as he gets him out of the water. So that was, I think, quite nice as a kind of way to end all of this. And Ikada then, you know, tries to convince the others, and we eventually come around as they all realize that people dying, that's all the war is going to really make happen. And I think that was fine, and that was kind of what you had to do, because again, I think lost in all of this was what exactly the Funado are even doing and what they're about. Like, what exactly the whole thing with the Shinonome 1 was really about, because they didn't focus on it too much. Because like, if the Shinonome 1 is active and is calming down the oceans, then why are they still so bad that Boruto would die immediately upon falling in? So it's kind of like, it's doing something, but it's doing something so subtle that it doesn't appear as if it's having an effect on you, other than just the mere suggestion that someone would attempt to quell the power of the oceans, which seems a little petty. And then that turns the attention, of course, to Amari, who's the one ready for the chakra cannon to charge up, ready to press the button. And because of the timing on when it finally finishes charging, the guy who's on the button is kind of like, but the war is over. Like, the Funado, we're surrendering here. We're not going ahead with this. And he pushes the guy out to the side and is about to press the button until Kawaki arrives. And they just have a minor little back and forth talking to each other, and then Kawaki just, I guess, slits Amari's throat, and he's just gone. I don't really know what the point was here. Like, this is where I think it just really went from being, you actually got the emotional thing right. After I felt like the last episode was a lot of talking without accomplishing anything, the scenes here were actually, to me, quite effective. And then you cut to the other side of the plot, and oh, he's gone. Like, why would you set up and tease all this if this is all you're doing? I understand what their maybe appeal was, and I'd latched onto this before, is that Amari is ultimately the one who is really, you know, forcing them down this path of vengeance. That I think without him, things would have gone differently, and that people wouldn't be so obsessed with revenge against the Mist. And he has kind of riled them up in that way. And that there's not a lot of proper conversation or thinking about things going on. And that was sort of the significance of like the older son, in a way, of like, he was kind of wanting revenge, but he was ultimately willing to negotiate, but he was killed right before they could make any progress. In that sense, like, the positioning of Amari made sense, in that we are not going to achieve peace while he is still around, while he is still leading the Funado. It's just that I feel the way to fully solidify this is that what you do is the timing happens exactly as is, but as a Maori sees everyone kind of basically unwilling to go ahead with the war, not wanting to take vengeance, he comes out, tries to make a big speech about how we still need to take vengeance against the Mist. He attacks, maybe kills the guy in the controls or something like that. Maybe he attacks Ikada, and that forces other characters to come in and defend. And we get a kind of larger scale fight of, Boruto, Mitsuki, Sarada, Ikada, and the others against a Maori. This way, it's not technically a part of the war because Chojuro and his forces aren't being involved, and there's no one that is like missed involved in it. And this is your final fight here. You can have, the thing is obviously like who do you in that fight get to kill a Maori, given that the whole point of this is to stop the killing to end the war, but it's obviously it's slightly different with a Maori where it was just like, here's the guy who's going to like in one moment reignite the war all over again by doing something that just can't be taken back. So Kawaki just eliminating him is a good way to stop that, but it obviously contrasts quite heavily with what's going on in the other side of the episode, that an assassination is needed to stop the war when Boruto's actions otherwise stopped it. Here, at least, you would have that sense of like, it's the Fanado dealing with their own leader with some minor support from the characters who are sort of, more in the middle of the war rather than on either side. And I think that nuance would have, worked. And that way we still get to see like a Maori sort of at full power. You would obviously have had to, I think, have had Ikada clash with his father. But I think that would have led to some nice moments of, him understanding to some degree, like, that his father is just as obsessed with revenge in a way as he was. But Ikada has learned from Boruto about that's not the only path. Whereas he kind of realizes that there's kind of, in a way, no hope for his father. His father's just completely blinded by vengeance, and that this is the way it has to be, and that some combination of like the other Fanado members end up sort of taking Ameri out, and it's just this kind of sad moment of that, like, it's unfortunate that most of like Ikada's family in a way had to die for the war to come to an end, but that he can go on in the right way. I think the blunt nature of just Kawaki taking Ameri out didn't quite work for me, because again, they struggled with Funamushi earlier on, and so the idea that Kawaki can just do this, I get it, he took him by surprise, but if Ameri's as powerful as we're saying he is, he should be able to do some sort of counter thing. Overall, I just it felt like, we don't want to do a big fight, let's just kill him this way. And it was really unsatisfying because the whole arc started with him being broken out, and we never really get to see what he's actually like. Beyond that, the episode, we had a few cutaways to Chojuro, initially thinking that this has gone bad, Boruto's just naive, we've got to prepare for the attack. But then when he sees what actually happens, he's like, no, like, I mistook your determination for naivety. Now, it's one of those things where, like, Boruto was never, I suppose, in full control of the situation. It could have gone very differently. There is some naivety involved in this. There just inherently is. You would say the same about a lot of sort of, Naruto when he was dealing with sort of a similar topic. So I think that's fine. He was determined, but still had some idealism in there that was maybe slightly unrealistic, but he stuck to his guns and made it happen. That's the whole theme of Naruto in terms of what we're about here. The only thing, and I people have brought this up already, is just that given where the manga goes, and basically within the next arc where it goes, it was a weird choice to have Sarada and Mitsuki effectively experience the emotion and pain of Boruto dying. I get it, you wanted to try and make this episode very, very big. And I do think, in a way, without that emotion from Sarada especially, I'm not sure you successfully turn Ikada and the other Fanado like you need to. But it was just an odd choice given where we're going to eventually get to. I get it, there's probably going to be quite a few episodes before we get back to the manga content, but it will still be there that this did technically happen, so bit of a odd point there. I did like that at the end we did get to see Ikada and Boruto have a little bit of a conversation and show that the Ikada we once knew is back, but I guess he now has his powers, and it means sort of, I guess he's effectively sort of the ultimate sailor in a way, in that anyone who's with him he can save from drowning because he has such control over the water. He can build his ship, continue his dream. But we'll see what they do in the next episode. Because we did have brief scenes with, like, say, the Denki crew and then the remaining swordsmen. They did arrive on the ship and were kind of watching what happened. So everyone was in the same vicinity as they watched Boruto fall into the water. Now, the main thing we get here is that Metal, I think, asks Bunton, like, do we still want to take revenge? And the idea is that, like, Bunton just sort of puts her sword down, and that, like, okay, she seems to, I suppose, be on board with this, whereas it initially appeared as if she is more on the path of wanting to truly take vengeance. And I like that, Chojuro reflected on that he had sort of misinterpreted, in a way, like, Kagura's dream. He let his emotion over the death of Kagura get the better of him, and that he felt war was the only way, and that ultimately what Kagura was about was protecting people in all of this, and that's what they, in a way, all should have been focusing on. So hopefully that's the main thing I want from the next episode. Like, in a way, a lot of the other stuff I don't care about too much. I just want to see what the direction is for Kyoho, but more importantly, I think Bunton. The preview seemed to suggest that Kyoho probably will become the new sort of, protector, guardian of Kagura's town. And then I think that will probably mean that Bunton has bigger things ahead of her. So I hope we do something with that. I assume the boss of the kind of boat building company will be back in play. Ikada. I think to finish this off, they do need to just clarify, like, okay, well, what is any sort of peace, or what is the negotiation actually about between the Fanado and the Mist? If that's what the conflict is about, that they need to go back to. It looks like there's going to be some minor, or maybe big, Kawaki-Boruto kind of conflict about this. Maybe Boruto hears that, about what Kawaki did, that he assassinated a Maori, and felt that could have gotten in the way of what he tried to accomplish. And it's highlighting, I suppose, their different approaches, in that Kawaki was calling him an idiot the entire time, even though Boruto basically achieved peace between everyone else. But Kawaki had to do what he did, otherwise it would have started up again. So there is that interesting dynamic of, like, one's the idealist, one's the realist, and Boruto is a little bit naive, whereas Kawaki isn't, and Kawaki had to do what he did to fully make Boruto's thing happen, and that being part of their dynamic. Yeah, so like I said, complicated thoughts on this episode. Like, mostly quite good, let down by certain decisions in the episode, and then just the arc overall still being a little bit too long, but had a nice theme to it. So, worth watching, but should have been shorter is probably the main thing. But we'll see what they do with the last episode. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. Where do you think they're going to go from here? But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.